Hey everybody, my name is Scott Newhouse. I am so glad that you are with me. Today I want to talk about a follow-up to the last video I made, which was 4 thoughts on Trump's tariff wars. And I said that I might have a fifth point, and this is my fifth point that I wanted to bring up. So definitely go back and watch that episode. I'll put a link to it in the description, and you can just find it on my YouTube channel /podcast. But I want to talk about one minor thing that I would do if you wanted to tweak your portfolio. And I said in the last video, I'm just not a fan of selling everything off because we've had a bad month in the stock market, because you're not liking what Donald Trump's doing. I just don't think that's a good long-term strategy, and I think it's a really emotional short-term decision. So I can't get behind it. The numbers back me up that that's a really terrible long-term decision. So go watch that video, see why I think that way. And if you disagree, let me know. And it's obviously your money, so you can do whatever you want. But for my clients, I am not recommending we sell anything, and I'm definitely not recommending we just cash out of the market and just say we're done for the next 4 years until we get someone different in office. So I'm not doing it, never going to do it, can't recommend it, and I don't think any historical analysis, any running of the numbers justifies just getting out of the market for 4 years. It just doesn't. So, okay, so that being said, I don't want you to liquidate your account. I think it's a terrible idea, but I do have one minor exception to people who are really squeamish about, everything going on, and they're just nervous. And that is, well, before I get there, I do want to say, risk tolerance, the, ability to withstand the ups and downs of the stock market, the ability to see your account value go down 10% in a month, which is what we've seen from February, mid-February to, basically today. I'm recording this on March 18th, by the way. So, couple good days recently, but it's definitely been a bad month. So risk tolerance changes with ages. I remember a meeting I was having with the client last year, and she said, Scott, when I was your age, and by the way, I just turned 39. I know you're looking at me on YouTube and you say, man, that guy's not a day over 25. Thank you. I appreciate it, but I am 39 years old. I'm in 100% stocks, by the way. No bonds. I have a large emergency fund, but that's because I'm a self-employed business owner, and I'm just conservative with the emergency fund stuff. So I do have a decent amount of cash above the 3 to 6 months threshold that I typically recommend for people still working. But anyways, she said, Scott, when I was your age, I was totally fine with 100% equities. Now that I am retired and most of my money's coming from my investment accounts with some Social Security, of course, it's just a whole different ballgame. And I can't withstand the craziness of being 100% in equities. And I said, Miss Client, I totally get it. I totally understand. And yeah, we don't need you to be in 100% equities. And that's where you're going to have bonds. That's where you're going to have some cash, maybe a little money market, and just some different things other than the stock market involved in your portfolio. That makes complete sense. Further, I've been talking with two clients in the last 2 weeks or so, and they came to me and they said, Scott, we've been seeing the news. We know it's been a great 1 year, 3 year, 5 year period, but we're just a little nervous, and we don't think we can stomach what we're going through now, for the foreseeable future. And both of those clients had relatively aggressive portfolios. And so one of them had a 90% stocks, 10% bonds portfolio, which is extremely aggressive. And then the other had a 70% stock, 30% bond portfolio. And so what I said to both of them was, hey, I totally get it. I don't think it's irrational. I don't think it's wrong to just say, hey, this is just too much for me to take. I think that's a normal, natural response. I think it makes complete sense. And I do think it's justified to rebalance your portfolio at different points in your life. Again, risk tolerance changes with age, and it just changes, by different seasons of life. And so maybe that's political, maybe it's something else. But if you want to rebalance your portfolio a little bit, if you want to knock down, and this is what I told these clients, if they want to knock down the percentage of stocks by 10 to 20%, so if you go from 90-10 stock to bonds and you go to 70-30, I think that's fine. If you're at 70-30 and I think this particular client, we decided to go to 60-40, that made sense in their situation. I do want to be clear though, and I've said this before, but it's it's a little hard to keep everything that I've said in track. But if you go too light in stocks in retirement, you're going to face one big risk, which is that your portfolio is not going to grow enough after accounting for inflation plus the distributions you make so that you have an ample amount of money in your 80s and 90s, and you might even get to 100 plus. So you don't want to go too light in stocks. I do have a couple clients who have a really great amount of money, and they're in conservative, like 50-50, 50% stocks, 50% bonds portfolios. But it makes sense for them given how much they have, plus how much they're getting from Social Security, and they're not tapping their portfolio too much. So obviously, every personal finance decision, the true answer is that it depends. But I'm just kind of giving you a rubric that 50-50, if you got a lot of money, yeah, you can justify it as long as the numbers make sense. Going too light on that, and by too light, I mean having too small of a percentage of stocks, it does make me nervous. So maybe if you want to tone down your portfolio by 10 to 20% in stocks and increase the bonds and money market funds, I think that's perfectly acceptable as long as you make sure the numbers work. And you've got to either figure out, what those numbers are for you. And I'm talking about safe withdrawal rates. Are you going to take out 4%, 5%? What kind of returns do you need to justify, what kind of returns do you need to make sure that your portfolio is going to last for a long time? I use very, very modest projections for my retired clients in terms of the returns that we need. If someone's decades away from retirement, I'm using a 7% rate of return estimate, obviously not a guarantee, but that's 100% stocks. So if you have some kind of bond allocation, maybe 5 to 6% is the projected number that you want to put in your portfolio. So you've got to run those numbers, make sure it makes sense for you. If you don't know how to do that, you absolutely have to get a financial planner. It's just it's non-negotiable. It's too important for you to have lifetime income to try and cheap yourself out of. To try and save a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 by not hiring a financial planner who can really help you with that. Now, if the financial planner is worthless, then no amount of money is worth it. But if they know what they're doing, then yeah, it's absolutely worth the investment of your money so that you get that peace of mind and clarity in terms of what you need to do. Okay, a couple caveats on that though, and let me just make sure I'm not missing anything from my notes. Just two caveats. These are similar, and it kind of goes into my last episode. Is that one, the recovery could be quick. And I said this last time, and I'll just do one example. We all remember COVID, March 2020, basically from like March to I think mid-April or late April, stock market was down 35%. It was absolutely insane. One day, I think it was down 10% in one single session, which, is not unheard of, but it's very infrequent, like, just a couple times a century that happens. So, that COVID downturn happened really quickly, but then you remember 2020, it not only rebounded, but the S&P 500 was up like 19 point something percent in 2020. So we went down 35%. Then we made back all those gains, which, if you would have said when we were down 35% in 2020 in April or so, that we would just get back to even in 2020, that would be a miraculous result. No one would have predicted that. And everyone would be really happy with that. But it actually got even better. We were up 20%. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of money that the government threw to individuals as well as corporations, which kind of exacerbated what happened with inflation, but that's a different story. But my point is, no one would have guessed that we're down 35% in April of 2020 and that we'd end up 20% up on the year. No one would have guessed that. So the recovery could be quick. It could happen extremely unexpectedly. And then the other caveat, especially if you're going to rebalance and increase your bonds and cash and money market and decrease your stocks, is that you're going to miss the rebound. Because when we're going to have historically, every single time we've had a rebound, so I can't guarantee we will have a rebound, but it's very likely in my mind that we will have a rebound at some point. And if you miss out on that rebound, what if the stocks return, 15% or 20% from this point, whereas bonds, maybe they'll be up, but maybe they'll be up 3 to 5%. I don't know what it's going to be. But historically, when the rebound comes, stocks outperform bonds. And so you're going to miss that rebound. So you've got to be able to make that trade-off of saying, I'm going to lower my volatility. I'm not going to have to worry as much about the headlines. I'm going to get more peace of mind, and my income that I need from my portfolio is going to be able to be there 15, 20, 30 years from now. But the trade-off is when the rebound comes, if it does, I'm going to miss out on a little bit of it because, you're only going from 70-30 to 60-40. So you're going to miss not a ton, but a little bit. So you just have to be eyes wide open, understand that you're making that trade-off, and just be okay with that. And obviously, if you're married, you got to make sure your spouse is okay with that too. So those are the trade-offs. This is the one exception I would make. Don't liquidate your account because of the Trump stuff, tariff stuff, or just, a bad 10% down month. Don't do it because of that. But if you want to rebalance, I actually think that's fine. Especially again, given that, 1 year, the 1 year returns on your portfolio, as long as you're diversified, good low cost index funds, you're probably up 5 to 7, maybe even higher than that percent, and that's still really good. So yeah, you're not selling at the high point, but you're still selling at a really good point historically, and you want to rebalance a little bit. I think that's fine. One other thing that I need to mention, I've mentioned cash a few times, and I started as a financial planner in 2015. Interest rates were nothing, as you guys can remember, and that's why mortgages were so low, and it was a really crazy time of basically free money if you wanted to take out loans, but if you were putting money in a bank account, you were getting nothing. And even the quote unquote high yield savings accounts that I use, like an Ally Bank, Marcus Savings, they were getting 1%, which was better than the 0.01% that Wells Fargo and Bank of America were offering, but still not a big return on your money. Now, that's all changed with higher interest rates that we have now. So if you do decide to add a little cash to your portfolio, I want to encourage you to put it in a money market account. Fidelity, Vanguard, Charles Schwab, they all have big money market accounts. You can get government-backed money market accounts, and they're offering yields of, like 3.9 to 4.1% right now as of March 18th. So that's going to change. I have seen it lowered a little bit, but if you're going to put in, and I actually think I said this to a client a couple weeks ago, if they wanted to just put their RMDs that they're going to have to take out, or their IRA distributions if they're non-RMDs, but they just want some money out, and if they just want to sell whatever they need right now, I think that's fine. You want to leave it in the account, that's also fine, but just put it in that money market account, and you can just Google search money market investment accounts, and you're going to be able to find some funds. Again, Vanguard, Fidelity, and Schwab all have some that are pretty high. So don't do it cash. Don't put your money in cash where you're getting 0.0% interest. Put it in a money market account or something similar where you're getting a little bit of interest on that. Okay, so that's all I've got. Don't sell your account because of these Trump tariff wars, but if you need to rebalance, I think that's fine. Just make sure you've got all the numbers checked out. You're going to have enough money 30 years from now, and then just make sure your portfolio is kind of in line with your comfort level, and accept the downsides of when there is a rebound. If there is one, you're going to miss out on a little bit of it. All right, I hope this helps. I'll see you next time. Bye.